country and everything in it.
They told us we did.
We Indians were hopeful. At first, we trusted the whites, and we waited for their chiefs to declare their intentions towards us and our land.
We knew of the atrocities that happened in our neighboring states.
And we remembered what we'd heard about the Queen being so good to those Indians.
And that her laws carried out by her chiefs were always just and better than the American laws.
The government officials began to visit us. They held meetings with some of our chiefs. They said,
"Have no fear, the Queen's laws will prevail in this country, and everything will be well for the Indians here."
They said,
"Every large reservation will be set aside for the Indians, and the tribal lands outside of the reservation will be bought from you by the government for white settlement."
They let us think this would be done soon.
And in the meantime, while our lands were settled for, they assured us we would have the perfect freedom to hunt, travel, and camp, and the same liberties as time immemorial to hunt, fish, and graze, and gather our food supplies where we desire.
And that all trails, lands, water, and timber would be as free of access to us as formerly.
Our chiefs were agreeable to these propositions.
Oh.
So, we waited for these treaties to be signed and everything settled.
We'd never known the white chiefs to break their word, so we trusted.
Meanwhile,
white settlement progressed.
Our chiefs held us in check.
They said,
"Do nothing against the whites. Something we do not understand. We charge them for keeping their promise. They'll do the square thing by us in the head."
What do we receive for our good faith, friendliness, and patience?
As the whites of this country become more and more powerful, and we less and less powerful,
they little by little change their policy towards us and commence to put restrictions on us.
And they have imposed on us in every way, taking advantage of our friendliness, our weakness, and our ignorance.
They treat us as subjects without any agreement to that effect.
they force their laws upon us without our consent, irrespective of whether they're good for us or not.
They say they have authority over us.
They've broken down our old laws and customs.
No matter how good.
By which we used to govern our own selves.
They laugh at our chiefs and brush them aside.
Minor affairs amongst ourselves, which do not affect them in the least, and which we could settle better on our own.
They drag it into their courts.
They enforce their laws, one way for the rich white, one way for the poor white, and yet another for the Indian.
They've broken down the posts of all the Indian tribes.
They say there are no lines except what they make.
They've taken possession of all of Indian country and claim it as their own.
Just the same as taking the house or ranch, and therefore the life of every Indian tribe into their possession.
They have never consulted us in any of these matters, nor made any agreements, nor signed any papers with us.
They have stolen our land and everything on them, and continue to use it for their own purposes.
They treat us as less than children and allow us no say in anything.
They say the Indian knows nothing and owns nothing.
Yet all their power and wealth comes from what belongs to us.
Our rights. The British Columbia government is trampled underfoot.
This is how our guests have treated us. Brothers who we receive hospitably into our own house.
After a time, when they saw that our patience might become exhausted, or that we may cause trouble if we saw that all the land was be occupied by whites, this is when they set aside these many small reserves for us here and there over this country.
This was their proposal, not ours. And we never accepted these reservations as settlement for anything.
Nor did we sign any papers or make any treaties about them. They thought we'd be satisfied with this. But we have never been satisfied.
Nor will we be until we get our rights.
We thought the setting aside of these reservations was the commencement of some scheme they had evolved for our benefits and that they would continue until they had more than fulfilled their promises. But although we have waited long, we've been disappointed.
We've always felt the injustice done us, but we did not know how to obtain redress.
We knew it was useless to go to war.
What could we do?
Even their government in Ottawa, into whose charge we have been handed to by the BC government, gave us no enlightenment. We have no powerful friends there.
Some offers of help in the way of agricultural implements, schools, medical attendants, even aid to our aged, were at first refused by many of our chiefs or never petitioned for.
Because for a time, we thought the Ottawa and Victoria government were the same as one.
And that these things would be charged and rated against us as payment for our lands.
Thus, we got along as best we could and asked for nothing.
You know, for a time, we didn't feel the stealing of our lands very heavily.
As the country was sparsely settled, we still had considerable liberties in the way of hunting and fishing and grazing.
Over by far the most of it.
But owing to increased settlement, this has become changed. And we're finding ourselves more and more restricted to our reservations, which in most cases are
unfit
or inadequate to maintain us.
The BC government claims absolute ownership of our reservations, which means that we are practically landless. We only have loan of these reserves in life rent or at the option of the BC government.
And thus we find ourselves with no real home in this, our own country.
in a petition signed by 14 of our chiefs,
delivered to your Indian Department,
July
1908.
We have stated the disabilities under which we labor, owing to the inadequacy of our reservations.
Some having hardly any good lands.
others no irrigation,
Water.
limitations regarding our pasture lands, limited by the fencing of so-called government lands by
The
whites,
severe restrictions put on us lately regarding hunting and
The
fishing,
depletion of salmon by overfishing of the whites.
etc., etc.,
etc., etc.,
etc., etc., etc., etc., etc.
our people are fined and imprisoned for breaking the game and fish laws and for using the same game and fish which we were told would always be ours for food.
Our old people say,
How are we to live?
These conditions of living have been thrust upon us, which we did not expect, which we consider in the greatest measure to be unnecessary and injurious.
we have no grudge against the white race as a whole, nor the settlers.
But all we ask is for an equal chance to make a living.
We welcome them to this country.
It is not in most cases their fault.
They've taken up and improved and paid for their lands in good faith.
But it's the government which is to blame by heaping up injustices upon us.
But it is also their duty to see that their government does right by us and give us a square deal.
We condemn the whole policy of the BC government towards the Indian tribes of this country as utterly unjust,
Shameful.
and blundering in every way. We denounce the government as being the main cause of the unsatisfactory conditions of Indian affairs in this country.
And of the animosity and friction with the whites.
So long as we feel justice is withheld from us, so long will dissatisfaction and unrest exist among
And
us.
we will continue the struggle to better ourselves.
In the accomplishment of this end, we and other Indian tribes of this country
Are now united, and we ask the help of yourselves and government in the fight for our rights.
We believe it is not desire nor policy of your government that these conditions should continue to exist.
We demand that our land question be settled, and that treaties be made between the government and each of our tribes.
We desire that every matter of importance to each tribe be the subject of treaty,
So that we may have a definite understanding with the government on all questions of moment between us and them.
In a declaration made in July
1910.
and signed by 24 of our chiefs, we have stated our position on these matters.
Now, we sincerely hope that you will carefully consider all that we have heretofore brought before you, and that you will recognize the disadvantages that we labor under.
And the darkness of the outlook for all of us these questions are not speedily settled.
Hoping you've had a pleasant sojourn in this country.
We remain.
Yours, very sincerely.
The chiefs,
Shuswap.
Okanagan,
Nlaka'pamux tribes. Oma.